This is Decarbonize the World with Frank Deline, solving the climate crisis while increasing profits in your business. Here's Frank.
My guest this week is Melissa C. Melissa is the head of venture investments and open innovation at Avery Dennison, a global Fortune 500 company specializing in the design and manufacture of a wide variety of labeling and functional materials. Avery Dennison has pledged to be net zero by 2050, with significant sustainability goals set out for 2030 to reduce waste and support the circular economy. Melissa, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Frank.
You're welcome. Melissa, before we get started, tell us a bit about Avery Dennison. Many people know them as a company that makes printing labels, but they do a whole lot more.
Yeah, very much so. Like you mentioned, we have a large labeling portfolio, but I would say for the most part, Avery Dennison is a material science company, and our materials go into a variety of verticals and industries. So everything from labeling and packaging that you might see on wine bottles, CPG products, food and beverage products, all the way down to, apparel products from UHF RFID. We're the largest manufacturer of UHF RFID inlays that help a lot of our retailers do inventory and back-end operations, as well as working closely with a lot of the brands in textile factories as well. And then we also have a large industrial and medical business too. And so, like I said, really runs the spectrum. And I think in terms of sustainability, we do look to find ways to make our materials more sustainable across all of those verticals.
That's awesome. So tell us about your role at Avery Dennison. I know you have a lot of experience supporting corporate strategy with companies like Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, but tell us more about your role.
Sure. So I joined Avery Dennison about 3-4 years ago to help spearhead its corporate innovation function. And so this was a newer corporate innovation function for Avery Dennison, but the goal was to really help accelerate Avery Dennison's innovation strategy, primarily in two ways. The first was minority equity investments in startups and early stage companies. And so could Avery Dennison deploy a small amount of capital in what we consider to be disruptive technologies to help us accelerate certain, Horizon 2, Horizon 3 business objectives, as well as, support those companies as well on their own growth trajectory. And then the second way that we corporate venture capital portfolio works to do that is through partnerships. And so sometimes investments in companies are not always feasible. We do have a pretty strict investment mandate. And so if we aren't able to make an investment, but we do still find a company management or technology that's very compelling, we'll seek to work with that company in other ways as well. So for example, R&D partnerships, joint development agreements, and then sometimes even more sophisticated commercial agreements like distribution, reseller, those types of agreements as well.
Great. Talk to me a little bit more detail about how Avery Dennison is deploying venture capital and sustainability.
Yeah, so I think for us, before we went out to make investments in the VC space, we sat down with all of our key stakeholders. So think all of the GMs of each of our businesses, as well as our CEO, CFO, and head of corporate strategy and development, just to understand where, their priorities in terms of strategy were. And resoundingly, sustainability was a key focus. And so I think that actually ended up being a huge cornerstone for the venture capital portfolio. One of our more recent investments, for example, was in a company called Roadrunner Recycling. And so what they do is they're essentially a tech-enabled platform that manages waste collection and transportation. Takes that waste, segregates it between what's recyclable versus not, and then takes those waste streams to municipal recycling facilities. And so we knew, for example, within our packaging business, we had a huge number of packaging converters that were looking for new recycling solutions. And a huge pain point actually was Avery Dennison's materials. We make, like you mentioned, a ton of labels, and those labels are very difficult to recycle or find other landfill outlets for. And so when we made that investment in Roadrunner Recycling, we worked really closely with the company as well as a lot of our customers to find out the best way to initiate what's called a quote unquote take back program. And so how do we segregate what we call matrix waste, or that label waste, very sticky, very heterogeneous, very difficult to manage. How do we get that waste out of landfill and find other uses for it? And so Within the first year of launching that take back program, we were able to implement with around 10 converters and then continue to expand that pilot nationally. But that whole take back program was definitely incepted through a venture investment. And I think the way that we deploy capital, we look to help grow, not only achieve our objectives on the sustainability side, but also help those portfolio companies as well. And I think the Roadrunner example is a really great example of that.
So last year, your CEO, Mitch Boutier, said that you have continued to advance towards sustainability goals set for 2025 and 2030 and substantially expanded your portfolio of sustainability-oriented products. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have both internal and external facing innovation for our sustainability goals. And so, for example, within our packaging portfolio, we look to create labels that can endure multi-cycle wash. So if there's reusable containers that can be used over and over again, as well as on the other end of the spectrum, adhesives and labels that can wash off easily to facilitate the recycling process. But in addition to that, with the venture capital program, we also do have, standalone commercial partnerships as well. And so a really good example is we recently worked with a startup called Ambercycle. And what they do is they essentially do significant amounts of textile recycling. And so they take textile waste and are able to repurpose it into new clothing and apparel. And so what we did was Avery Dennison, because we have a large apparel business, worked with them in creating what's called a digital printed fabric care label. So think, the labels that you would see on your shirt or any type of garment that have like the wash instructions, all of that. What we did was we were able to put a QR code on that fabric care label, and when a consumer purchased a recycled Ambercycle shirt, they were able to see, the sustainability story of that shirt, what the environmental impact of purchasing that shirt was versus a brand new cotton shirt, for example. And then when that shirt came to the end of life, where they'd be able to recycle that shirt as well, so that it would then be processed into another recycled garment. So we do pilots and partnerships like that as well. And I think, one of the projects that I'm really proud of and, interested to watch develop is we had an internal startup within Avery Dennison called Atma.io. And the general manager of that business is also very passionate about sustainability. And so they have a really great partnership with Adidas for their Infinite Play platform. And that platform essentially is a way for consumers to take their existing Adidas products and resell it and ensure that their products are going through the circular economy versus landfill. And so a significant portion of Adidas's products, whether it's the sneakers or the soccer balls or the garments themselves, they all also have these unique QR codes. And then Atma.io on the Avery Dennison side manages unique IDs for each of those items. So when you go and purchase an Adidas pair of sneakers, for example, there will be a unique ID associated with those sneakers that only you have. It's unique just to Frank. When you come to figure out that maybe those sneakers aren't a good fit for you anymore, instead of just tossing them in the trash, you can scan the QR code. It'll take you to Adidas's Infinite Play platform, which is powered through Avery Dennison's Atma platform. And you're able to resell those sneakers. And a company like Adidas will then work with other re-commerce sites like ThredUp to be able to process that resell. And then on top of that, in order to incentivize you to continue to participate in the circular economy, Adidas can then also provide a voucher as well to reward you for that loyalty. And so I think the really great thing about partnerships like that is we're seeing a lot of engagement from big brands and a lot of engagement from consumers as well. And just on the Infinite Play platform for Adidas, we're getting 4,000 unique interactions on that platform every day, all consumer oriented and all within the UK and the US. And so I think demonstrative of a lot of the traction and passion that both the brands and the consumers have for more environmentally friendly choices.
This is very interesting. It seems very comprehensive.
Yeah, it's still early in its inception, so there's still, I think, a lot to learn in that journey, especially as it comes to digitally connected products.
Right.
But we're seeing a huge range of products being interacted with. It's everything from soccer balls to Yeezy boosts, all of the types of sneakers, and so I think that's it shows that there is definitely a consumer out there that is very sustainably conscious, and brands like Adidas that are out there that are interested in empowering those consumers to make those sustainable choices as well.
Great. Avery Dennison has pledged to be net zero by 2050. with significant sustainability goals set for 2030 to reduce waste and support the circular economy. What are some of the initial sustainability efforts? For example, are you getting into renewable energies?
Yes, so we have a variety of sustainability metrics. Renewable energy is a piece of that, but I would say for a large portion, the three big ones for us is having 100% of our core product categories, so the printed fabric care labels that I mentioned, all of our paper, our heat transfer labels, so those are the labels that help create the graphics that go onto shirts, all of that stuff, packaging RFID, will meet a third-party verifiable, sustainable standard. And then on top of that, we also want 100% of our standard label products to contain either recycle or renewable content. And that's across all of our regions. And then I think the third piece is diversion of our waste. We want to make sure that all of our waste operating within our facilities and our operations themselves, 90% of that waste is away from landfill, with a minimum that 80% of our waste recycled is either reused, composted, or sent to energy recovery of some kind.
Good. Well, stand by, Melissa. We have to stop here. But coming up in the second part of my conversation with Melissa C., Melissa shares the question Avery Dennison asks when reducing environmental impact.
How do we find ways to collect items that could potentially be diverted from landfill and then put back into a circular economy, whether it's re-commerce or upcycling in other ways as well? And so I think that we're looking, not only at things in apparel, but also reusable containers or refillable business models. And how do we enable that as well so packaging doesn't have to go to the landfill in the first place?
This has been Decarbonize the World with Frank Deline. To connect with Frank and to learn more about clean energy, reducing fossil fuels, and increasing profits, go to frankdeline.com. Decarbonize the World is a production of Advantage Audio.